Today's conflict that we are going to discuss is Kashmir, which is an outstanding issue for a long, long time now. And it was a cause of self-determination recognized in 1948 by the United Nations Security Council, but those provisions or the promises have remained unfulfilled since 1948. And it has an impact on the human development as well as on the environment that I need to bring forward to your notice today as well. And this is the person who presented a solution, a political solution, and I follow him. He has been a stalwart in the politics of Kashmir as well as in Pakistan. He was privy to Mr. Jinnah and Mr. Gandhi in 1940s. He joined Mr. Jinnah in 1944 and worked till the creation of Pakistan. And there was a dialogue between Mr. Jinnah and Mr. Gandhi where they reached certain conclusions. And he was the only person who witnessed that happening and the history in making. And this is what he presented and came up with the idea. He was elevated to the post of president of Muzaffarabad in 1959. At that point in time, people didn't have any civil or political rights. There was no right of vote. People were being governed through draconian laws that I can't go into details, but he abolished all those rules and he gave the right to vote. And in 1961, the first elections were held, the most free and fair at that point in time. He won the presidential election and he established a elected house there, and which it was represented by all people from the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir, which comprises of 84,000 plus square mile area, including Gilgit and Baltistan. The people of Jammu and Kashmir have been the scapegoats here. We have suffered heavy losses. Both the countries and the people, the armies, have suffered heavy losses. And in 1971, a part of Pakistan was separated, unfortunately, and that ended up in an agreement which is known as Shimla Agreement. And in that agreement, they have decided, both countries, that Kashmir, which was a case of self-determination, it becomes a border dispute between India and Pakistan by declaring the ceasefire line of actual control. And since then, this issue has never been raised in the Security Council, but the people of Jammu and Kashmir never were a party to this agreement, and they have outrightly rejected this agreement. In 1990s, the younger generation in Kashmir Valley, they started a violent movement, and over 31 years, we have seen a lot of violent and so many inhuman incidents that we can't go into detail, and you are presented with a lot of groups coming here and presenting those and highlighting those, all those incidents day in and day out, but no one has presented any resolution to this issue. And that is a cause of concern to us, that we are moving in circles. So the impacts of this high, long-standing institute is that 1/3 population is living in poverty, education is declining, 40 million children are out of education in Pakistan only. So healthcare system, we have no or very failing healthcare systems. There's no access to clean drinking water. Extremism is on the rise because of these practices. In 1999, there was an attempt to come to a resolution, but it ended up in a very different situation when one of the military generals, he went on to an excursion in Kargil, and that ended up in a full-blown war in 1999, and that peace process was sabotaged. This is an area which Fabian, I was discussing with yourself about Siachen, and you can see this is a border sort of given between India, Pakistan, and China. And this is the area which is a source of water supply to the subcontinent, as well as it maintains the ecosystem of the region. And probably it contributes to the global ecosystems as well. Now, this is the situation there since 1984. And there are about 30,000 troops that are present in these oldest glaciers. And now the evidence is accumulating that their presence is causing spread of disease in three rivers that are draining into Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. As well as the ice is thinning with every passing hour. And this is a few of the casualties that have happened over the years in that region, and we are facing a lot of escalation and violence on the borders between India and Pakistan in Kashmir region. Right, there's a long LOC, and we see escalation every day and out on this borderline. People have become disabled, people have lost their properties, businesses have been damaged, people have been forced to leave their places. And in Gilgit-Baltistan, which is one of the hotspots, they are developing the CPEC project over there. Area is disputed, and the local people have not been consulted, and they have promoted certain laws according to which a person who is raising his voice for his political and civil rights can get imprisoned for 40 years, which is out of the blue, that even a murderer doesn't get 40 years, but one person who is raising voice for civil rights can get 40 years. And coming to the current issue on this side, this is the picture of a river that flows through Muzaffarabad. It's called Neelam River. This picture was taken in September 2014. This is another picture. So this is one of the oldest bridges. This is called Neelam River, and it comes from those glaciers and flows through this valley, which is called Neelam Valley. So this is a picture before. Now they have developed a project, the hydel project, which is called Neelam Jhelum Hydro Project. It has started its work now. It's completed, and it will generate about 969 megawatts of electricity. And after this dam has been filled, now this is the current situation of the same river. And the difficulty in this project is that they have put the water about 30 kilometers before the main town into the tunnels on both sides. There is another river coming on the other side of the valley. It's called Jhelum River. Both rivers have been put into the tunnels, and they have bypassed the population area, and they have built up a powerhouse after the population, after the where the people are living. So this is how now that river is presenting. So water deprivation is considered sort of an aggression on the people. It's some people call it as terrorism as well, water terrorism. And it is going to affect the whole population. There will be damage to the already damaged hills there. Mudsliding will be very common after when the rainy season starts. Glaciers are thinning out, and this adverse situation is going to affect region as well as the globe. That's my hunch. Now these are the people who recently had a protest in front of London High Commission, and one of their representatives who organized this event, he is sitting with us over there. You can see him. So this protest was organized in front of Pakistan High Commission, and people are not happy about it. And similarly, they had another protest in Muzaffarabad held yesterday, where large population came together and protested about. There's another mega project going on, which is called CPEC, and I think there's an APPG has been established for CPEC as well. And The main concern is that what environmental impact it will have is that a lot of trees and will be cut down. There has been no replacement. So usually what happens is that when you are planning to cut down some trees, they plant them before, 10 years before they cut it down. This is what happens here, but nothing has been done to address the environmental issues. Secondly, it goes through an area which is not yet settled or constitutional part of Pakistan, and they are going through that. So how it's going to impact on our main issue is yet to be understood and considered. So the people of Jammu and Kashmir want to live peacefully, and that's the reason why we are sitting here today. The new government in Pakistan did announce that they want to have a dialogue with India, but the very next week, the information minister said that India has not reciprocated and we are not going to have a dialogue. So it seems like we cannot define it, or is it a joke, what is it? But a week before they have said it, and the very next week they have just retracted their claim. Now this is the time when today we wanted to update you on these recent developments, and our friends are here as well, so if they can have any suggestions how to make the two powers come together and promote peace, promote harmony between the two neighbors. Over 71 years we have seen it has resulted in death and destruction and nothing else. So I'm grateful for all of you to be here today. And Fabian, you want to go first so that you can...
Well, with Julie's permission. Until or unless we recognise that, we will continue to damage the fragile planetary environment and ecology that we're so fortunate to live in. And we saw from your pictures, Dr. Misfa, the beauty of the region. I mean, it's stunning, and it's well known that Kashmir is one of the most beautiful parts of our planet, and yet it's being spoiled by a political, military dispute between two giant neighbours with little or scant regard to the people who are suffering, the ordinary people of those areas. Now, one of the things that when I was Shadow Minister for the region, one of the things, and over the last 20 or more years that I've been a parliamentarian representing a substantial Kashmiri community, one of the things that always stood out was that you have India and Pakistan spending vast amounts of money on their military, on developing nuclear weapons which, God forbid, were they ever to be used, would destroy all the living things on this planet. And at the same time, the people in their own countries are starving and are left without clean water. I mean, you only have to go to, I've been to Pakistan on 2 occasions, I've been to India on maybe 8 occasions. You've only got to go to some of the more remote parts, or even the inner city areas of Delhi, for example, to see for yourself the extraordinary gap between the very richest and the very poorest, and that the very poorest are barely surviving and often die far too prematurely. And of course their children and their babies are far more vulnerable. This inequality should not continue. That's why Julie and I became elected members. I'm sorry to speak for you, Julie, you can speak for yourself, but that's why all of us stood to be elected, whether we're Conservative, Liberal, Labour, Scottish National, it doesn't matter, because we are so concerned about the human misery caused by political or military conflict. Now, my role as the Shadow Minister for Peace and Disarmament is to try, it's a very tall order, but to try and address the conflict areas and bring people together. Just today and yesterday, I've been with the Saudi ambassador, for example. I've been with the Sudanese ambassador. These are not two countries that the Labour Party is very fond of because of the conflicts that they're involved in, or have been. But we have to talk to them. And we have to say what we feel as critical friends. Whilst we want a good relationship between our country and theirs, we have to say what is wrong. Because you and I know that if we actually say we are your friends, but we don't act in a critical way to bring ourselves closer together, then we're not true friends at all, are we? And that applies both ways. Somebody says to me or my party or my country, you're doing this wrong, I want to listen. I want to know if they're saying it in good faith because they want us to be closer and better. In the end, we only have, well, we have one life on this earth. And it is for all of us to make sure that we are stewards of the earth and the environment and the ecosystems that are so delicate, but also that we learn a very difficult human lesson, and that is to live in peace, put our arguments and conflicts behind us and find a way through. And unfortunately, and I won't mention names, it's getting more and more difficult with some of the world leaders we currently have in position, not just in the USA. But we have to get around them. They're only there because we voted for them. Or sometimes in the case of Russia, maybe in China, we didn't vote for them, but they're there nonetheless. If people can use their power to say, we will not put up with this any longer, we will not put up with the suffering, there is a better way to live and to live together and to share the fruits and the wealth of the earth that it's provided for us, then we can have a future as a human race. And if not, I fear for our children and grandchildren. But thank you for presenting this so clearly and for showing us that actually Kashmir is not just important for India and Pakistan and all the people who live in the region, but it's actually important for the ecosystems, the environment, the water supply, for a vast number of people who are living on this planet in that area. And we know that. We know the Chinese are exploiting the Tibetan plateau in a similar way. And it must not be allowed to continue. We have to find a way through it. So you're all here because you're dedicated to that cause, and I salute you, and I thank you. Because unless you do what you do, we look to something else that's more pressing. We turn to the constituents that are pushing us on, whether it's health issues, very important issues, whether it's other issues. We listen to those who are prepared to say loudly and clearly what they believe and what they think we should do in good faith. And I know how well you do that and what good faith you act in. So thank you once again, and forgive me that I have to move on to another event. Thank you.
I am a relatively new person coming to the cause of Kashmir now since 2009. I'm still a student of Kashmir, and I listen to your views. And I'm very grateful to my friend Ms. for keeping me so well informed. And now I am privileged to be elected to the British Parliament. I also have staff now who can help me research this as well. And they have a list, you know, as Fabian just said, I represent 90,000 people, and they have lots of issues that they bring to me. And it's right that they do. So we all have lots of things to be doing. But I have a list of key issues that matter to me. And because of MISFAR, Kashmir is on my list. And all my staff know it is an area of extreme importance for me. And no, I mean, I'm not... The work's been done by other people, and the suffering's been felt for by other people, and that's why it matters. I have been convinced that this is an issue that's worthy of my time and commitment. So my staff know as well. Anything at all to do with Kashmir, we are listening and we are supporting wherever we can. That said, that there are no easy answers, and if there were, we'd be sorted by now. That doesn't mean that we stop trying. I am a huge optimist about the world in general, and having looked at the Kashmir case, I think good things can be achieved. And it'll only continue to step in the right direction because of people like you, making sure that people like me never forget how important it is. I've been very heavily involved with the all-party parliamentary group here on Kashmir, and we have been taking lots of evidence, and we've taken lots of evidence, it's been primarily, I have to say at this stage, from the issues caused by the Indian occupation of Jammu and Kashmir, and lots of important factors have been identified. And I know that it's not just the APBG that are looking at India's indiscretions in this area. Amnesty International is very concerned. The United Nations are very concerned. And I was very pleased to see the new United Nations Commissioner for Human Rights this week begin a first speech to the Council raising the issue of Kashmir and Indians' human rights violations. Now, this was a very big step this week for that to be said. You look at the words, if you're not a politician or not a diplomat, think, well, no big deal, she said something small. But this, on the international community, is watching what she says. New Impulse, this was a very big thing. India is very insulted. Well, that's tough. They are guilty, as suggested. And she has said quite clearly, and Amnesty has also said, that India is in violation of its obligations to the international community. And this is important because India wants to play a big economic role, and so it is potentially damaging to them if the international community turns against them. And I think that there is a little chink in the armour here, and we've got to keep up the pressure on that. I have been critical, though, of the APPG in not taking more wider evidence. The evidence has predominantly come from Pakistan, Kashmir, and I have said all along that we need to hear the full story here. We need evidence from across the board, because like Ms. Farrer and like Fabian, one of my huge motivating forces is a desire for peace across the world. Wars and conflicts don't serve anybody well in the end, and it's not about taking revenge against any of these nations. It's about getting people around the table, and you don't make peace by talking to your friends. You make peace by talking to your enemies. And we learned that here in Britain. If we ever needed to learn it, most of all from the Good Friday Agreement in Northern Ireland, which brought peace after many years of conflict here. I raised the issue recently with other parliamentary members and members of the House of Lords about my concerns about the three occupying powers of Kashmir, India, Pakistan, and of course China. And the point was made to me that, well, China are there, but there aren't very many people there, so you really don't need to talk about them. However, their presence there is very important because they're occupying land there that has valuable resources that ought to be in the control really of the people of Kashmir. And I think that is an important point that's been overlooked very much. Also, I have to say the all-party group is dominated by MPs who support Pakistan's right to control Kashmir. I come at it objectively. I just want everybody's voice to be heard and for the people of Kashmir to make a decision about their future. I'm fortunate to live in the UK. We are all fortunate to live in the UK and to live in a democracy where we get to have a vote about our futures. We don't always win our elections, but it's a fair election and we get a say in our futures. And I think that's a right that ought to be afforded to everyone across the world, not least in Kashmir. One useful thing that you're probably all aware of, but I was very much, my attention was drawn to the detail of some of the legislation that the Indian government have passed, giving special powers to the forces in Kashmir. And I think that there is an opening here now with the new United Nations Human Rights Commissioner to draw attention to some of this again and to shine the spotlight on it and to keep shining on there. We must continue the conversations with all parties and press for people to come together round tables, and we won't do that by being aggressive, and I know that your stance is the right one, this peaceful, open-ended, open arms approach. Please come and talk to us. It is very welcome and is the right approach. Dr. Ms. Farr's approach in terms of raising environmental issues. He is the only person that I have heard raise environmental issues in connection with this conflict. And I have really spent hours and hours and hours listening to briefings on Kashmir in the last 4 years. I genuinely have. and always want to deepen my knowledge and understanding. But Misfa's the only one that's raised the environmental issues, and they're extremely important. Now, I did get the opportunity to raise the issue of the diversion of the Neelam River for hydroelectric power, which of course is being done, I guess, to support the Chinese-Pakistan economic link. And I raised the impact on the people of Kashmir who are deprived of a water supply, and also I understand from Dr. Misfar a food supply. Some of the fish that lived in the river are important to the communities, and the president wasn't very impressed with the question, and he did say that he was working with the authorities to sort the water supply, but clearly he's not. And this issue won't go away. I'm trying very hard to get Dr. Misfar invited to the APPG, and it is proving extremely difficult. Everybody keeps saying yes, because I have said he will be a good witness, and it's important his voice is heard. And they said, oh, we've contacted him, but he's not had the contact. So I've furnished new details, but I keep pressing on this because, you know, my husband would testify I'm good at pestering people, and this is an important cause, and I will pester them so much that they will, just for peace, they will invite him to come along, because this evidence is really good. Do we now have a copy of this presentation?
I will forward you.
Is this Sammy got it now? So that's really helpful. There's some really good facts and figures in there.
Yes.
But so I'm really interested to hear from you. Because I say I am genuinely trying to learn some more, and I thank you for your commitment and for making the journey here. I know it's not easy for all of you, and you're obviously busy people in your own lives, but it's important what you do, and I want you to know that you have my support, and the support, you know, I'm sure there are people in lots of political parties that support you in Britain, but the Labour Party definitely does. Yeah. We believe in peace and equality for all people. It is our founding principle, and that's what we will drive this forward. And I know that in Jeremy Corbyn, you have a friend. He believes in world peace, and it has been his life's work for peace all over the world, and to address inequalities and unfairnesses and attacks on human rights wherever they occur. And I'm really proud to be working as part of that team to further the cause. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you very much. Just before we open it for your suggestions, I just forgot to thank Demi, who has been vital to give us all the support and help.
He's a star.
Particularly yesterday evening, I was about to have a panic attack at 4 o'clock, and I just can't